Welcome back to Old War Stories with Uncle Jay. Here we are with another anecdote of little things that happened with the old 81 Chevy Citation. This was actually the final nail in the coffin for that car, for what had happened and then what ultimately did happen as a result of that. It was sort of an interesting chain of events. I don't know how or why any of this actually occurred, but I'll just jump right in here. The car had 196,000 and change miles on it, I believe, at this point. And I'm thinking this is around summer of 2003. Summer of 2003, if I recall. Yeah, that probably seems about right. I had a lot of very important shit coming up. I had decided that the wife and I had an apartment in Elmont, New York, and I was over there. And the next day, she and I were leaving on vacation. Well, I had my old Chevy, and I think she had her 2000 Toyota. No, we had her Chevy Cavalier, her 90 Chevy Cavalier. And we took a trip to Massachusetts to go to the Big E Fair. It's called the Big E. And we were going there, and the transmission in my old 81 Chevy was touch and go at best. We got the car with 140 some odd thousand miles on it, and found some paperwork in the car that showed that the original owners had the entire transmission rebuilt at one point for essentially half of what the entire car cost. And there also was a trailer hitch on the back of this car. So they used to tow stuff with it. No idea what they used to tow, and the people that we got the car from were not the people that rebuilt the transmission, because these people would have junked it. So when they got it, the people that we got the car from, when they got it, it had the hitch on there and already had the transmission rebuilt. It never quite worked right many times. And there's a million different little nuances it had, and I'll just spare the details on that so I can give you the gory details of what happened. I just want to preface this by saying this by no means is not the end of this car in terms of I'll never talk about it again, but it was the end of this car in terms of ever driving it again. Okay, so it's a Sunday night, if I recall. And it's getting on about 8 o'clock at night. It's dark out, and I had to go from the apartment back to my parents' house because I had a little appointment, and I couldn't let the wife know. I had an appointment with a friend of my mother's. That lady's husband cuts diamonds for a living. And I needed to get an engagement ring for Patty, so we were going to go through him. And in the diamond cutting business, there's a lot of interesting stuff that goes on. There's not very many diamond cutters because it's an extraordinarily precision job. And if you fuck that up, you could ruin this diamond that could be worth thousands upon thousands of dollars. So it's a big fuck up if you do that. All of the diamond cutters and jewelers would carry a pouch with them, and the pouch would be in their pocket, a little like velvet pouch, and they would put the gems and stuff in there. Sometimes they would sell the gems whole, sometimes they would sell them to other diamond cutters where he'll pay a lump sum for this big diamond and he wants to cut it down into 3 smaller ones, and then he can make, buku bucks on top of the price it was sold for. And where they get the diamonds from, I don't know. the raw diamonds, things like that. So a lot of times they lend each other diamonds. It's sort of like, here, take it, see if you can sell it. If you can't, give it back. You don't just give somebody something that's worth $5,000. Well, I guess you do, because you give them the fucking ring, and then if it doesn't work out, you know. So, but in the business, you just lend people stuff, and you know it comes back, and sort of one hand washes the other. Well, anyway, this guy got a diamond, and it fit the description of what I was looking for. I had a very specific thing I was thinking about, and I was invited over, and he talked to me. He showed me the diamond. He gave me the price, and the ring. You know, how do you want the stone set in the ring? You could have what's called the high setting, which is what I wanted, where the little metal prongs that hold the stone in place are very tall and proud and sticks up from the actual band. Or you could have a smaller one where the stone is sort of set in there like that. All depends on what you want. Anyway, went over there. I came, well, I was going to come cash in hand. I didn't quite make it there. The car, I had to get on the Southern State Parkway to go, ready for this one exit. That's right, my parents were one exit away. And while I could drive the streets back to my parents, it was often much faster to go down to the parkway, grab that for the one exit, get on there, speed on down, and get off. Well, at my parents' exit, it is a hairpin turn that goes uphill. Bad all around. It wasn't raining. I didn't have an accident. I was fine. What happened was the car wasn't. I start driving. The car is acting absolutely normal, like it always does. And I'm driving, and I'm on the parkway, and everything's fine. And here's the exit, so I put the blinker on, and I get over into the turn-off lane. And like I said, this is a hairpin turn that goes uphill as you're going around. So you have to slow way, way down so you can make this turn, and as you're turning, you would accelerate to get up the hill as you go around there. So I slow down, I'm taking the turn, and then I step on the gas, and the car let out a death scream. It just went, and it didn't move. I was still rolling, and I was able to roll onto the grass that was there. And I said, shit, that's not good at all. Uh-oh. That's bad. Shit, now what? Alright, I put the car in neutral, and I rev the engine, and just vroom, vroom. Okay, I put it back in drive, and nothing happens. It's like it's still in neutral. If I let off the brake, I start rolling backwards down the hill. If I step on the gas, it just goes vroom, vroom. The only thing that worked is park, and it's a damn good thing that park worked, because the parking brake, or emergency brake, as morons call it, was non-functional in that vehicle. So there would have been a big problem if I was on a hill and had to leave the car and the parking pole didn't work. Anyways, fortunately, it's about 4 or 5 blocks to my parents', maybe a half a mile. So I had to leave the car with the hazard lights flashing on the shoulder there and walk to my parents. Well, meanwhile, I was supposed to be there at 8 o'clock, and obviously this ain't happening at this point because it's, I ran into car trouble and, I got stuck having to walk. Okay, sorry about that. So I walked to my parents' house, and in the meantime, they had called the whiff. Did he leave yet? Yeah, because he's not here yet. Oh, gee, I hope something didn't happen. Whatever. So I finally get to the door. I was kind of like half running there, and I made it to my parents' house, and I rang the bell, and I'm like out of breath, and they're like, what happened? Where were you? My car is dead. What? What's going on? So I explained the story. Oh shit. I guess. Well, damn. Okay, so now we had to call the guy with the diamond and let him know that we're not going to be able to make it anywhere near on time. And we had to go back with another car to the parkway and get off on that same exit. And we hooked up the tow rope and we towed it back to my dad's house and put it in front of the house where it never moved again until it was finally towed away. And anyways, I had gone originally to pay for a diamond, several $1,000s. The next day, I'm going on vacation, and even though it was just a driving trip, it's still going to cost $1,000 or $1,500 between hotel and gas and tolls and food and everything else. So, I was spending a lot of money here. I didn't expect to be buying a car. So, the end result with this, which is jumping ahead for a minute, because I still have to tell you about the car, which is the whole point of this, is that I bought a diamond ring, went on vacation, and bought a new car, all in the same week. Oh, and by the way, for you millennials out there, I paid motherfucking cash for all three of these things. That's right, cash for all three. So there. No, anyway, it was back about the car. I did pay all cash for that, by the way. And that came to somewhere to the tune of about $20,000. Just so you know. And that was not even thinking about the house. So clearly, I had a little bit of money that I needed to spend. But I didn't expect to be buying a car that week. Anyway, long and short of it was, the transmission grenaded itself. How and why? If I have a sneaking suspicion, the hydraulic pump inside there that pumps the fluid around died, and that's what the death scream was, and that's why the car didn't move. The fluid's not being pumped around, and it's dead. That's it. So, anyways, the car sat in front of my dad's house, and we went on vacation, and I was sort of worried about this with the other car. I was sort of worried about this the whole time. It was always on my mind, and we were on a bus that would take us from the hotel to the fair, and that had an automatic transmission in it, and that was slipping, and the guy was having trouble driving it. But these buses often aren't well maintained in that. Anyways, getting back to the end result of the story, I had a zillion wires, as I've told in previous episodes of this, that were run all around this car. I had gadgets and gizmos and electric things and solenoids and relays and actuators and motors and fans and lights and all kinds of crazy shit that had to come out of this car, because I'm not going to junk the car with all this shit, because I wanted to save all this shit and put it in my next car, which ended up being old Clanky, and it just wasn't the right fit for that car. So nothing ever happened with this stuff, and I still have it. Anyway, some things I've used, others I haven't, but that's neither here nor there. This was a project that took pretty much a week because, again, like I had said in a previous episode of Old War Stories, I used whatever scraps of wire I had, and I would save any scrap of wire I could. So that means I didn't just go in there with a pair of wire cutters, snip, 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 rip, and it's done. Nope. I would go in and undo every wire meticulously so I could save the integrity of it for it to be put to reuse, not knowing that I was probably never going to reuse these items, or that wire for that matter. The car had at least half a tank of gas in it, and it was never moving anywhere. The engine still ran. It still started up and it ran. So I'm going on like, what do I do? Like, I'm thinking like, I want to like kill the fucking car off because I'm not fixing it. So I said to my dad, hey, I want to drain the oil out of it and run it till it seizes. And he's like, you really don't want to do that. You really don't want to do that. Now, this is about 2003, so I believe this is before YouTube. And if anybody remembers way back in the early days of YouTube, David Rock, David's Farm or Dave's Farm, Redneck Rickham, Crazy British Bloke, One Pug Life for a time, Backyard J, any of that stuff, yeah. Dave Rock did this stuff, and he would drain the oil out of engines and blow them up. And then you also, when YouTube came out, you started seeing these things. And my dad was right. You didn't really want to do that. So I guess in retrospect, it's a good thing I did. But I said, I got to do something here. And I don't know why it didn't occur to anybody, or maybe it did, but we didn't want to do it. I figured I have gas in the tank. I might as well burn it off. Now, the car didn't have AC, so it's not like I could just have the AC on and the doors and windows open and the engine running and shit like that. And it was carbureted, so it didn't have AC, and I didn't need the heat because it was plenty hot out. It was the summer. Or end of summer. I think it was actually September-ish, yeah. And anyways, I had easily a half a tank of gas in there. I said, I know what I'll do. It was now like the third day of removing shit. I said, let me just start it up, and I'll just fucking run the car for hours until it runs out of gas. So here we are, it's like a Wednesday now, and I start the engine up, and it's running at its fast idle. I guess it would run close to 2,000 RPM, or maybe a little higher or lower than that, I don't know. So it would run at the fast idle, and you'd usually leave it running there for a minute or so, and then you'd step on the gas and just go, vroom, just give it a quick vroom, and that would quote-unquote kick it down to your normal idle that you would have just sitting in a traffic light. So I started it up, and it's running in its fast idle, and I'm dicking around, and I'm dicking around, and I'm dicking around, and it's running at its fast idle, and probably a good 10, maybe 15 minutes went by. Well, the engine's nice and hot at this point, and I said, okay, yeah, that's really, I've let it go long enough, because I was hoping to leave it at fast idle for a while to help it burn the gas more, so I can get my money's worth out of it. Cheap Jew talking. So, anyways, what ended up happening is I went vroom, but the car just stayed at its fast idle. Huh, that's weird. Did I maybe not hit it enough? That's strange. Why would that happen? Vroom, 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 still running at its fast idle. I said, oh, shit. Something else broke on this broken car that can't move. Huh. Well, gee, I guess I'm not going to run it out of gas, because I really don't want to leave it running at fast idle any more than this, and this was even too long as it was. So I had to shut the key off. Well, what happens with an old, tired, carboned up, worn out, carbureted engine when you shut it off when the engine is running fast? It diesels. What's dieseling? Dieseling, or a run-on condition, is when you shut the key off and the car pretty much stays running. Essentially what happens is the carbon buildup in the cylinders gets flaky, and these little flakes or peaks and valleys or whatever it is, the little tips of them, start glowing red hot. And then as the piston comes up for the compression stroke, that little glowing thing is enough to ignite the fuel, and boom, you have combustion and the engine runs. And then it happens with the next cylinder, the next cylinder, the next cylinder, the next cylinder. And the car doesn't run as if you just didn't shut the key off. It sputters and coughs and spits and will do all sorts of things. Bad stuff basically happens. You don't want the car to diesel, and like I said, this is not going to be the final video I'm ever going to be talking about this car, so there's going to be other stuff. Anyhow, it's dieseling, and it's going, sputtering and doing coughing and spitting and shit like that. Now, a common trick in the day was if your car did that and you had an automatic transmission, you'd throw it in drive, and then that would put a load on the engine and stall it, and then you'd put it back in park and take your key out, and that was that. Well, this was an automatic, but the transmission didn't work, so I didn't have that option. The next option you would have is to put the headlights on, and hopefully that would put enough of a load on the alternator and do that. And if that didn't kill it, you could put your blower on and your headlights on and step on the brake and put it in reverse, so the reverse lights would go on, put your high beams on, the wipers, any electrical anything that you could cause that would put enough strain on it to stall it. But eventually it just sputtered out and stalled by itself. I said, ooh, that wasn't good. I don't know what happened, and I don't know why it didn't kick down. Well, it's too hot now to touch. Maybe a little later I'll look and see why it didn't kick down. And then maybe I could start it up again later. Well, it so turns out, I need some water, pardon me a minute. It so turns out that in the few seconds it took for me to think about that stuff, the car sounded like it had a stomach ache or stomach problems, like when your stomach gurgles. Not when you're hungry, but like after you ate something and you're like, oh, I'm going to be taking a bad shit in a while, and things start bubbling and gurgling and shit like that. And you know there's like real trouble brewing down there, and you're in the, you know that you're going to be going to the bathroom for an exceptional event, if you know what I mean. And meanwhile, XJoe81X is watching this like, ha, I just shit my pants watching. Anyway, anyhow, so the car is making all these gurgly, grumbly sounds and that, and I said, well, let me just look and see what the hell is going on under the hood. So I already had the hood open on the car, and I was in the car when I heard all this. So I get out of the car. I shut the door, the driver's door, and I take about another step forward. So now I'm about even with, here's the hood that's open. So now my head is about even with, I was like just before that, just before the hood being open. And out of nowhere, boom! Big explosion. White cloud. The upper radiator hose burst from the pressure. The hose had a fucking hole in it that just went boom like a fucking balloon. It exploded. There was a shower of coolant that shot clear across the street. I shit you not. Now you say, well, shit, Jay, weren't you like in the line of fire for that? No. Almost no. One droplet of scalding hot coolant landed here. Just about here. And I had a little tiny burn mark. Little tiny mark right there. That was all that I was injured. There were gardeners across the street. Nobody else was in the path of this when it exploded. There were gardeners across the street, and even the three Julios that were there. Are you okay, man? Yeah, it's okay. Don't worry about it. I'm fine. You okay? Yeah. All right. So now you're all probably thinking, well, yeah, I mean, this was an old car and it wasn't taken care of, and that radiator hose was less than 5 years old. My dad and I had replaced that hose before, and it burst. So I think it was sort of almost like a comedy of errors that went on, because I don't think the radiator was hot either. And the pressure that had built up of this coolant boiling and getting hotter and hotter and hotter to a stuck closed thermostat. That's what all those sounds were, and eventually the pressure just built and the hose couldn't take it and fucking burst. I couldn't imagine the amount of PSI that was in there, because those hoses are rated to well over, I don't even know what they're rated, well over 100 PSI, if not even several hundred PSI. I don't even know. But it's rated to pretty high burst strength, and it's fabric reinforced. It's a layer of rubber and a fabric net on that with more rubber over it. These are rigid, thick hoses. If you've ever seen a radiator hose, and I know a lot of millennials have no clue about this, but anyway, if you've ever seen a radiator hose, these are big hoses with a nice diameter, and they're sturdy fucking hoses. And this fucking thing burst. Wow. That was the very last time I had started that car. I didn't get to run it out of fuel. I didn't get to drain the oil and seize the engine. And why we never just siphoned the gas out of it and into a gas can, I'd imagine the reason why was because we didn't want to pick up any sort of sediment or contaminants or anything that was in a 20-year-old gas tank and then cause damage to another car. So it was better to just let the gas in there be disposed of when the car was taken away and cut your losses. At that point, what did it cost to fill up? $20? $25? Maybe, something like that. It didn't have that big of a tank anyway. It was maybe 12 gallons, 13 gallons, something. I don't even know. And I wouldn't even run that car anywhere near empty because the gas gauge didn't work on it. So I went by mileage, and I would refuel it every 150 miles. My sister let it go longer and ran out of gas like twice. But yeah, we never fixed that. and I drove it without a gas gauge, and I would just refuel it every 150 miles. So I never quite knew. At 150 miles, I would fill it up till it was full. And I knew I could easily and safely go 150 miles before needing to refill. And even then, I would get like 9 to 11 gallons, something like that. So I was still within a good margin of safety at that point. So it wasn't much to fill up, and it was better to just cut my losses, and that was it. So I lost out on half a tank of gas or whatever it was, and that was the deal. But yeah, the radiator hose actually exploded. So I bought a diamond ring. I went on vacation, almost got killed, and bought a new car in the same week. Well, it was actually over a 2-week span, but you know what I mean. It was all at the same time. Oh, yeah, that was fun. And then I got married, so everything just, it was already on, like, as low as you can go, and then it just went lower. Just kidding. Anyways, that was the story. Like I said, this is not the last you will ever hear about my old Chevy. There's going to be other stuff I'll remember about it. Maybe if anybody's interested, I can one day tell the story of all the little nuances that the transmission had when it was cold, when it was hot, depending on where I drove, if I went uphill too much, if I parked on a hill, etc., etc. If anybody wants to know, just leave a comment. But I'm all talked out for this one. This was 32 minutes. So thank you very much for watching. Make sure you click like, make sure you click subscribe, and take care. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.